Hello chess friends and welcome to another video. Today we'll be presenting a game between Viswanathan Anand against Ruslan Ponomariov, former world champion. Let's take a look at this amazing game that was played in Bulgaria 2006. Viswanathan Anand with the white pieces starts with e4, king's pawn, and then c6, the Karo-Kan defense. Okay, this is a standard theory, d4, d5. And here white can simply advance or exchange or simply develop the knight to c3, either to d2. But here Anand develops the knight to c3, pawn takes, knight takes, and here bishop f5, attacking the knight. The knight retreats, attacking the bishop. Now the bishop's attacked, bishop to g6, and now knight f3, simply developing. This is all standard theory still from the Karo-Kan. So knight to d7 was played and h4. Now preparing to push h5 and trying to trap this bishop, so h6 giving room for him to escape, h5 chasing the bishop, bishop h7, and now bishop to d3, kind of attacking the bishop here and proposing the exchange of the bishops. Of course, black cannot allow this bishop to h7 move because then the rook is just gonna be out of place. So bishop takes d3 was played, queen takes, and now e6, and then bishop f4 here was played by Viswanathan Anand. Very standard. We are at move 11. We are at move 11. But we are still at theory right now, opening theory. And here knight from g2 f6 and long castle, and now bishop to e7 here. Another possible move that is vastly played here is knight to d5. Now attacking the bishop. The bishop can retreat back here to d2, and then the bishop will be kind of controlling the knight from d2 and also guarding the a5 square. So the queen cannot go there. But here instead, Ruslan Ponomariov prefers to play bishop to e7, and here Viswanathan Anand goes knight to e4. Now just proposing the exchange of the knights, knight takes, and knight f6 attacking the queen, and queen goes back to d3, and queen d5, attacking the pawn here on a2, and here c4. Viswanathan Anand attacks the queen, so it's a counter attack. Queen e4, Ruslan Ponomariov proposed the exchange of queens, so queen takes, knight takes, and now the knight's attacking here on f2, where he'll be making a double attack on the rooks, so bishop e3 defending, and finally castling. Both players played very well so far, and we're kind of entering this middle, going to an end game. Let's see how it goes. 95 here from Viswanathan Anand, bishop to d6, and now f3 kicking the knight. Knight goes to g3 attacking the rook, rook h3 attacking the knight, and the knight goes back to f5 attacking the bishop, and the bishop goes to f2 controlling the knight and also guarding the pawn here at d4. Rook from a to d8. Now the d4 pawn is a good target here at the position, and now g4. Viswanathan Anand forces the knight to go back, and now knight e7 was played, and now knight to d3. Maneuvering the knight, so b5, b3 protecting pawn, and now bishop to c7, and the rook here is making pressure on the d file. And now rook from h to h1. The rook was doing nothing here on h3, so it goes back, maneuvering to better places. Bishop to b6, and now knight to c5, maneuvering the knight and blocking the attack here on d4. Rook from f to e8, and now king to c2 here from Viswanathan Anand, bringing the king to the end game. B takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, and we are kind of entering the end game now. e5 was played and rook to d6. Now Viswanathan Anand is taking advantage of this pawn here on c5, and it's amazing that Anand has these doubled pawns, and this is kind of being excellent here in the position. So the pawn on c5 is giving support for the rook on d6, and the pawn on c4 is not allowing the knight to go to d5 square. Rook to b8 was played, and a rook from h to d1, and now rook to b7, just guarding the 7th rank. Rook d8, now proposing the exchange of the rooks, rook takes, king h7, and now rook f8, pressuring here the pawn on f7. So f6 was played, protecting the pawn, and now bishop to e1, maneuvering the bishop. Rook d7, now bishop to c3, knight to g8, and here a4, and then goes pushing the pawn with a bright idea here to push a4, a5, a6, and bring the rook here to b7. Can Ruslan Ponomariov stop this? Well, he tries, first playing g6, and now Anand plays a5. What is going on? Why didn't Anand take here? Because now the king is trying to go to g7. For example, if pawn takes, and then after king to g7, now the rook has to go out from here, for example, rook to b8, and then the knight can play here on e7, and the pawn is going to be captured, and black has a little bit of more space. So that's why after g6, Anand doesn't give this chance to his opponent and pushes the pawn to a5, continuing with his amazing plan. Ruslan Ponomariov takes the pawn on h5, g takes h5, and now king to g7, attacking the rook, rook to b8, preparing to play here on b7, knight e7, a6, and now king goes to f7 with the idea to protect the rook here on d7, just in case Viswanathan Anand, for example, if he plays rook here to b7, then the king is able to come just in time to save the rook here on d7 to protect the rook. So that's why Anand didn't play now rook to b7, and he continues with bishop a5. What is he doing? The game continues. Wow, it's amazing. This move is amazing. I mean, the first time you see this move, you don't actually understand what Anand is going to do next. So it's kind of hard to understand the first time you see this move. But after knight f5, now it becomes clear after Anand plays this amazing and astonishing move, bishop to b6. Look at that. Look at this move. Viswanathan Anand is sacrificing the bishop to gather those pawns and be with two passed and connect pawns, and it's just gonna be over. So amazing move and putting pressure here on a7. Here Ponomariov follows with knight to e3 check, king goes to c3 protecting the pawn on c4, and now king to e6 just bringing the king. Rook to c8, this move is just powerful, and now there's no way to protect the pawn on c6. Amazing. King goes to f5, now black is trying to counterattack, maybe can capture a pawn and have pass the pawns. So rook takes e6, and now knight to d1 check, the king goes to b4, and now rook goes to d2. Viswanathan Anand continues with bishop takes a7. So black was never able to capture the bishop because of the two passed connect pawns would win easily. So bishop takes a7, and now rook b2 check, king a3 attacking the rook. The rook goes to b1, and now rook to b6, proposing the exchange of rooks. Rook goes to a1, king b3, and now e4, trying to create a passed pawn. You can exchange and then try to push the other pawn. So f takes e4, king takes e4, and not capturing here on f6, which would be sufficient to win, but Viswanathan Anand goes with the more aggressive move, c6. And how can you stop this pawn? I mean, you just can't. King to d3, maybe black can try to do some repetition, 3 moves repetition, something like that. So, but Anand has everything under control. c7, rook b1 check, and the king goes to a3. And it was in this position that Ruslan Ponomariov resigned the game. There's nothing else to do here. I mean, what can black do? Just give one more check here, rook to a1 check, and the king can go to b4, and another check here, and then the king comes to c5, and you cannot prevent the pawn from promoting. Maybe you can still try rook to c1, and just in case you promote, you capture here on c4, and then you capture on c8. But rook d6 is enough to win, because now the king has to go away from this pawn on c4, and you can simply promote the pawn and be winning the game. An amazing game from Viswanathan Anand against Ponomariov. Let's just take a look at the report at chess.com. So here we have the stats. Viswanathan Anand made two brilliant moves. That's amazing. 95.2 accuracy. That's just amazing, right? And Ponomariov was really played well, but was simply not enough to stop this Indian tiger, Viswanathan Anand. Well, that's it, people. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your audience, and see you next time. Bye.